Tonight, we're continuing with the Center for Book Arts Fall 2021 Online Broadside Reading Series with a virtual reading from contemporary poet Jayson P. Smith and the Spirit of Historic Poet I, moderated by the program's creator, Harmony Holiday. This reading is part of a series that began more than 20 years ago, and it's been giving the opportunity to visual artists and poets to work together. Harmony Holiday is a writer, dancer, archivist, and author of 5 collections of poetry, including Mafa. We would like to thank our funders. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York State Council on the Arts, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, and also by poets and writers. Special thanks to I's estate and everybody who donated to support this event and people, who bought the broadside. The broadsides are available at a special price until the end of the series. So we encourage you to purchase one. Now, Harmony, I will give you the mic to begin.
Thank you. Thanks for that intro. Thanks to the Center for Book Arts and thanks to Jayson for agreeing to read. I'm just going to give a brief intro to I, and then we'll play the archival footage I put together of her work. So when I was basically, I kind of set it up so that I don't have to introduce her. She'll kind of introduce herself and you'll learn a lot of her. I cut it up so that because she was the kind of reader who gives a lot of meta details about her biography between poems, I experimented with putting a bunch of that info from a reading in 1973, all of her like meta speak together, sort of as a biographical statement of hers, and then some poems from reading in the mid 80s. So you can sort of hear her growth, you hear the change in timbre of her voice, and you hear kind of her demeanor and the way she was through cadence and just what she shares between her poems. And it's interesting, I found myself, she talks about the name I, which she developed through numerology and wasn't her given name. And she mentions that she wanted to do away with her ego based on what that name means to her. And at that moment and other moments, like listening through these archives of her reading, which I love, I definitely was talking back to her a little bit because it feels like, I don't know, there's something about her that's so intimate that I can almost, you feel like you know her when you hear her speaking. And I felt very much like she didn't get to that, like there's a, what am I trying to say? There's a level of crypticness that she held on to that it seems like stopped her from transcending the ego in the way that she wanted to. And to me, it's a sort of tragic thing to hear play out across the different readings of hers that I was listening to. And it might just be my perception of her, or like me wanting her to like get past this certain point that feels obsessed, I guess, with horror. But at the same time, like I was saying before we all gathered, I think she's the only poet who does Black horror the way like Bill Gunn, the filmmaker, does it on film. Like she would be, so she sacrificed a lot to be seated in that horrific position with that kind of gaze through several different books. And so at the end of the day, it was really generous, but I hear her and I like wish that she could like break out of it and think about flowers. But so yeah, I think she's a beautiful reader and I don't need to say more. We'll listen to archives.
I call myself I. Because for a long time I didn't want to use my own name and I don't like it. And I had studied Japanese, but I totally forgotten it when I decided what name, but it means love in Japanese. But actually I was doing numerology, and A is 1, and I is 10. Together they make 11, and that means spiritual force. And so that's the name I want to be under. And it also, for me, means impersonal I, the eye of the universe. I was trying to get rid of my ego. And my poems are harsh, but they're meant to show the truth, which a lot of people are afraid to face. And then a lot of the poems are sort of just psychological studies, really. This poem and one called The Root Eater were sort of the beginning of my stronger work. In July '69, my season in hell. This is the funniest poem I think I ever wrote. It's really weird. Somebody criticized this poem, and they said that it doesn't have an ending, but I like it. It was my favorite. I used to have a goat. I had a black goat. My sister had a white goat, and they were, my grandfather slaughtered them. I don't know about this one. The title may not be right. I got into the Depression era, the 30s. There's some real fine plays from the 30s. I just saw one called Awake and Sing, Clifford Odets. Thought it was very fine. So powerful, the words. I'm very obsessed with the cruelty of human beings to others and to animals and to themselves. And lots of my poems are about that. This poem, I knew a gypsy, a European gypsy, and his one aim in life was to be a South American dictator. And so he said I was too naive for him. So when he left, I read in the paper they're having trouble in Bolivia, and I think that's probably where he is now. If you get bored, tell me and I can cut it down. I had 41 because I had no idea how many poems you could read in an hour, because I could have read them in 20 minutes. Just right through. People at Irvine hated this next poem, and so I didn't. It's on the school system is on quarter. It's a quarter system, and I didn't go for the rest of the quarter after they gave me a hard time. That was 3 weeks. I just went to a teacher because they got into this, the New York poets. They like to bullshit a lot. That's all. Some days, a 3-hour workshop would be nothing but bullshit. Snap, snap. They'd be hitting each other with all this talk, I could never keep up with them, but anyway, they were giving me. They hated my poetry. Those New York people. I didn't like theirs either. This one is called Disregard. I call myself I. And I hate Sunday. To me, it's like sailing off the edge of the world. It's just like Columbus or something. Gonna fall off Columbus. Now, this is one of the new ones. Well, an old one that I just did. Let's see. Toward the end, I use speak, and there's a colon, and I say mouth speaking. That's the idea. And so everything after speaks is dialogue. Like, it's called a tenant farmer. Nails of rain puncture the ground as I sit at the table rubbing a fork. My woman slides a knife across her lips, then lays it beside a cup of water. Each day she bites another notch in her thumb, and I pretend relief is coming as the smooth black tire earth wheels around the sun without its patch of topsoil. And my mouth speaks, wheat, barley, red cabbage, roll on home to Jesus, it's too late now, you're dead. This is called Elegy, and this is for my cousin John, who was killed in Vietnam. in 1967. I tried to write something for him since 69, actually. I started in 69, and I could never do anything. And then in the spring of 83, I was finally able to write this poem. And after that, there's just like, to me, a flood of poems about Vietnam. I wrote one poem about Vietnam, then I watched that PBS series on Vietnam, and then I read Fire in the Lake, and I read the Shawcross book on Cambodia, and then I wrote a poem that loosely deals with Cambodia. And by the end, I was just totally exhausted, just dealing with it. And I don't think that I'm through with it yet, actually. There's something else kicking around in there, but it's very depressing. I went to the killing fields a few weeks ago, too, and I made this sort of, told myself, kind of hypnotized myself so that I wouldn't think about it that night, but the next morning it just all came back about 5 in the morning, and that was really so intense. This is called Elegy, for my cousin John. 1. Hundreds of flies rise from my face, and I feel as if I'm flying, but it's only a daydream. I'm 75 in the Veterans Hospital, and this isn't 1917. On TV, Saigon is splitting apart like a cheap Moroccan leather suitcase, and we are leaving it all behind, our dirty, dirty laundry. Maybe it's the right thing to do. Maybe soldiers are reborn infinitely to do each century's killing and mopping up. We stand at attention in full dress. A general rides by in an open car and we cheer. How I cheered, here's to the trenches, the mud, the bullet-riddled days and nights. That one night in November 1917 when I thought I was dead, when I felt myself rising straight for the moon's green, cheesy heart. But I wasn't dead. I was on a troop ship in the English Channel 27 years later, and nothing had changed. Last night I dreamed about my mother. She was pregnant with me, and I was also there with her as a young man. I wanted to end it inside her womb with my bayonet, and somehow I cut my way to the child. I took him by the feet and flung him high over a smoky black rainbow, too. Suddenly, my body jerks forward, then back, and just as suddenly, the TV screen darkens, and the voices of the journalists fade, then hang in the air like whispers as the orderly takes hold of my wheelchair. When we move down the hallway, small, almond-eyed people cheer as I roll by. I recognize them all. That one was with me in the trenches, that one in the concentration camp, and that vapor there from Nagasaki. The orderly lifts me into bed and folds the mended blanket across my chest. Imagining things, I say to him, well, what if I am? Just lower the coffin. Let those clods of earth come down like 100 blows. You say never, you, never. But when it's your turn, you'll pack your sweet dreams in your old kit bag and go. And on that true last day, you and I will rise toward heaven like two great brass notes from Gabriel's horn. We'll shout, hallelujah, the war is over. We'll shout the gates of heaven down. This one is called The Journalist. The Journalist, 1. In the old photograph, I'm holding my nose and my friend Stutz has a finger down his throat. We're 16 in Cedar Falls. It's all still a joke. In my mind, I'm back there. The blonde who used me like a dirty rag is gone in a red convertible. The top is down. She sits beside the Greek from out of town, his hair slicked down with bergamot. I don't care. I do care that she cruises the streets of little America without me. I take a last drag off my lucky
pull my cap low and take the old road to the fairgrounds. I'm 16. What do I know about love and passion, I think, as I watch the circus set up, watch as the elephants pitch and sway, heads and trunks swinging wildly. When the yellow leaves stir and spin around me, I walk back to the river and skim stones across the clear gold water of early evening till the 7:18 whistle blows. Then, as if on command, I start running from childhood, from the hometown that keeps me a boy when I want to be a man. Manhood, a dream, an illusion, I think, as I lay down the photograph and stand still in the anemic glow of the dark room lights, my body giving off the formaldehyde smell of the unknown, too. In Vietnam in 1966, I stood among the gathering crowd as the Buddhist nun doused her robe with gasoline. As an American, I couldn't understand, and as I stood there, I imagined myself moving through the crowd to stop her, but I didn't. I held my camera in position. Then it happened so quickly. Her assistant stepped forward with a match. Flames rose up the nun's robe and covered her face. Then her charred body slowly fell to the ground. That year in Vietnam, I threw my life in the air like a silver baton. I could catch it with my eyes closed, till one night it sailed into black space like a wish and disappeared. Or was it me who vanished, sucking the hard rock candy of the future, sure that a man's life is art, that mine had to be? But tonight I'm 53. I've drunk my way to the bottom of that river of my youth, and I'm lying there like a fat carp, belly down in the muck, and nothing, not the blonde, the red car, or the smell of new money can get me up again. I lay out the photographs of the nun. I remember how her assistant spoke to the crowd, how no one acknowledged her, how we stood another 2 or 3 minutes till I put my hand in my pocket, brought out the matchbook, and threw it to the nun's side. I stare at the last photograph, the nun's heart that would not burn, the assistant, her hand stretched toward me with a matchbook in it. What is left out? A man, me, stepping forward, tearing off a match, striking it and touching it to the nun's heart. I throw the photographs in the metal wastebasket, then take the heart from the glass container of formaldehyde. I light a match. Still the heart won't burn. I put the fire out, close my eyes, and see myself running, holding a lump wrapped in a handkerchief. I think someone will stop me or try to, but no one does. I open my eyes, take the heart, and hold it against my own. When I was 16, I was a dutiful son. I washed my hands, helped my mother set the table, got my hair cut, my shoes shined. I tipped the black man I called boy a dime. I didn't excel, but I knew I could be heroic if I had to. I'd set the sharp end of the compass down on blank paper, and with a pencil end I was drawing the circle that would contain me, everything I wanted, everything I'd settle for, life and all its imitations. That day and way I had the chance to step from the circle, and I took it, but when I turned back, everything inside it was burning. My past was gone, I was gone, but the boy was still there. He watched the flames take the nun. He took her heart. He was running. I was bound, he said to himself. I'm free, but it was a lie. I put the heart back in the container, hear the heavy footsteps of my wife, the blonde, who is gray now, who is clumping up the stairs in her rubber boots like some female Santa Claus, and the heavy canvas bag slung over her shoulder, all the smashed toys of my life. Wait, I say as I stand with my shoulder against the door, wait, you haven't heard the best part yet. A boy is running away from home. He's lost his cap. He's wearing the icy wind like an overcoat. He can't go back. He won't go back. He never left. Thanks for that. That was the last poem that I wrote for the manuscript. What's happened lately, though, is the last two I wrote I thought were really good. And I told my editor, well, I'll give you one of them. And then last week I thought, well, I'll send the other one, and I keep adding this stuff and keep thinking, well, it'll just make the book stronger, and it's like it's getting out of control now, though. It's like some sort of neurosis now. It's like add on so that when the book comes out, it'll be 350 pages. It's the largest book of poetry ever written. I talked to this philosopher who said, the volumes are so slim. So what do you expect? It's your life's work in 60 pages, I expect some opus. I'm just giving myself a small break here. This next one is also new. I wrote this last March, and I wrote The Prisoner in December, and I just recently mailed this on to my editor to also add to the book. This is called The Emigrate, and it's about a Russian woman. And Lubyanka is the prison in Russia where Stalin imprisoned a lot of people. And if you watch that program, Riley, Ace of Spies, then you'll remember the name Lubyanka. The Emigrate. I stare down from the terrace at the firemen in their slickers, black mice in black hats, close my hand around some smoke, then open it, and that smoke is gone like the Russia of my childhood. When I was a girl, my father worked for the Cheka. One morning he forced my mother outside in her torn nightgown. The apartment was filled with her scent, ink, paper, fresh bread. I was warm, full of potato latkes and milk. I sang the song of the world revolution, but that revolution betrayed my mother. It's quiet now as the fire trucks pull out onto the asphalt sea like tiny crimson arcs. As quiet as the apartment when I stopped singing, when my father said, "Come, your mother's safe." I followed him down the steps, but near bottom I stopped. He turned around and held out his arms. Then I jumped. I sit down at the word processor. On the screen, a page from the memoir I am writing. Even now, I hear my father's voice as he shouts at my mother. She jerks her head toward me, then raises her skirt and wipes her face. I erase one word, another, till the whole page is gone, but I cannot erase that scene. My mother is locked forever in the Lubyanka inside me. Her dirty, bruised face streaked with tears. The handbill she'd printed in that beautiful script of hers, torn and scattered about her on the floor like mutilated black and yellow butterflies. Now as I lean over the keys with my eyes closed, her face rises inside me, a fat harvest moon in a sky of India ink. A face whose features are so clear, so like my own, that I cannot deny them, yet I do deny them. My life is mine. She's dead. She died. She dies each time I write. But no, she's alive. She condemns me for leaving, for bearing witness only in the dark. I begin once more. A scene fades in, out. There are shouts from outside. A door is flung back. Mother and father are taken from the room. Father, who worked for the Cheka, murdered by the Cheka. Mother, who opposed it, also murdered. I go back to the window, look up at the gray tarpaulin of sky, and see Father riding a red star down from proletarian heaven, and further out, Mother straddling her own renegade star, gesturing and waving to me. They want to teach me to die for what I believe, but I say disown the world. Don't save it, don't try. Live for what you believe. Survive another night. But here they are, pressing their bloody faces against the glass. I slide the bolt back. It's then our eyes meet, my two brown speckled marbles and their sockets filled with the black, blinding light of the universe. Jerry Stern came to read in Kentucky, and I had been trying to work on this. I had seen this program about Russian emigres, which was real interesting. A lot of them aren't really happy or comfortable with freedom. You know, it's a frightening thing for people who haven't really had it or whatever. Maybe we don't have complete freedom, but we have a lot more than a lot of the emigres do. At any rate, Jerry Stern was reading, and he was talking about Mayakovsky, and he said Mayakovsky had been betrayed by the revolution. And I thought, you know, that is kind of what I want for the mother in the poem.
I call myself I. It's mad.
Only God is never satisfied.
Sweet. Thank you to I. Posthumous beauty. Are we going to talk about the broadside of hers before I introduce Jayson? Or are we doing that afterwards?
I think we're introducing Jayson first.
Okay. Well, I can read his formal bio, but I just want to say I paired Jayson and I because I felt a similar fierce temperament of like cadence and just like clarity of approach to a line and a thought in a poem, which I really admire. And so, yeah, Jayson P. Smith is an interdisciplinary artist and poet from the Bronx, primarily working within language, sound, and movement. Their work is interested in Black performance, interiority, collaboration, and somatic practices. Jayson has received support from the New York Foundation of Arts, 2017, the Poetry Project, the Poetry Foundation, among others. They can be found in Brooklyn and on the internet at jaysonpsmith.com. And that's Jayson. Yeah, you guys want to spell his name. Thank you, Jayson, for being here and for reading.
Thank you, Harmony. Thank you, I. Thank you to the Center for Book Arts for having me. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I see a lot of really familiar faces in the room, and that is really exciting and beautiful because I is a tall order to follow, to live in the footsteps of. I found her work in, I would say 2016, back Rest in Peace Poets House, when that was still a thing. I found Cruelty when I was along the shelves, and Tired Old Whore was the first poem that I read of hers, and it like yanked me out of my body. When it's a really beautiful thing to like meet an ancestor in a particular way, and I think the poets in the room like know what I mean when I say that. And I very much felt like that to me. It felt, her work felt like a prompt, right, to like keep going in like a fine way, right, and I'm very much like okay, cool, like that's all you got, right, and it really pushed me to pursue that kind of clarity, and I think real quick before I get into these poems, I think it's really beautiful and really full circle to be arriving at this reading in a moment where I think I'm finally understanding again what language means to me, because I think I was going back and forth with language and trauma and what it means to put words on a page, etc. And I felt like I was writing from a very specific place. And I think the poetry taught me to look for something else. And so, yeah, I'm gonna try some new things today. And I'm really grateful to Harmony for opening up the space for me to do that. So in honor of I, and in honor of I, this first poem is after Tamika Norris. And Tamika Norris is an artist, a performance artist who is most well known for a piece called Untitled, which the poem is referencing. After she went to Yale for painting, and during her MFA, a professor told her that what she did was not paint. And so for the Radical Presence at the Studio Museum, she, in front of a group of onlookers, sliced her tongue open and began to paint her corner of the space with her blood and what was mixed of her saliva. And that's the piece, right? So yeah, this is called Integrity after Tamika Norris. I was far too quiet to become a killer. So I've been thinking about poetry and kind of what I'm writing about or towards. And so I've been thinking a lot in kind of groups and series. So I'll read two poems from a series that I'm thinking about called Ours, which is a shortening of Ars Poetica, which is essentially a poet kind of thinking about the world, right, through the lens of a poem, or thinking about the state of poetry, right, through a poem. So this is Ours. It's kind of a reconditioning of that. Ours. The day was devoid of coercion, and it was good. Dawn hems faltered fathers, artificial and assembled, to pass time refusing to die. Sometimes there is study. Sometimes we make it downtown, adjust the pitch of allegory or hell, survive. Avoid eponymy and abattoirs long enough to feel interesting. To answer your question, I ceased witness. Same day as recycling, all predictably fraught, avant-garde and reading a room wrong. Sorry, I was told by AppleCare my job equaled speaker, you know, sonnets with cells, prepositions, light opinions, professionally upset, how it undulates through my applications. We say we're over our antecedents and then obsession, and the gates close as one of tons to understanding. What case can we ever make for elegance? Through humiliation as the grass rustles. Water is important. I hope y'all are hydrated. Ours. As a primary consumer of poison, a syllogism, I'm singular, sagittal, languaged on the far side of acquisition with terrible incentives to yield, near an orchestra seat, a missed message, synonyms for negative space, of course. Just to approach, feeling invokes refrain. Did you ever think that you would be this stripped, strapped for signifiers, a full head ass beyond dignity? Refrain. All I can refrigerate these days is narrative. Tally syllables, sibilant while elsewhere, stacks run for my disclosure. Faux morality made me feel special for a time. But Oprah's been canceled. Fantasy forms and couplets, and sponsored partners want simpler war. A story for the children. Can you tell I wake up didactic, practice indecision, because I care about the dance of it? All right. Older thing. Yeah, I'll just read it. Watching Paul Mooney hum Amazing Grace post 9/11 while eating hot wings from Crown Fried. Don't try this at home by yourself. We're at war and I'm American again, sleeping at 8 like shit. New, visibly cankered, coy, mythologies locked in before morning coffee. There's an order to this. A working list of what makes my teeth white. Dick, chicken, everything but solitude. It's unbearable. 12 niggas going to flight school bad. And repercussion is so certain, but you knew that. Peep the joke hiding. I leave him a blues and he leaves me for dead. Who knows about being pathetic, yet functional? You got shoes, I got shoes, so I suppose we should be intimate. Maybe just moan at our echoes. It's mostly productive with a punchline involved. I haven't smirked in weeks. Narrative is not just the simple transportation of language, it is of ideas of the self and ideas of the self that contain negations of other people. Dion Brand. If I talk about the time, if I tell you, if there is a word for, if we both knew what we know, if we cannot, if we tried to, if we or the other time, if you talk, if I tell, if the word tries for time, if the no we know is a word, if the no we know is a word, if we try to tell the word, if you, not we, if we word what we know, if we word what we know, if there is time, if there is a no to not, if what there is times what we know, if about you is not, if about you is, if about you is not, if for words time tries, if time tells, 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 if for words time tries, if about you is not, if what there is times what we know, if there is a no to not, if there is time, if we word what we know, if you not we, if we try to tell the word, if the no that we know is a word, if the word try for time, if I tell, 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 if we tried to, if we both knew, if there we cannot, if time cannot we, if there is a word for, if. I want to read a sonnet. I'm going to read a sonnet. I'm going to drink some water and then I'm going to read a sonnet. Actually, I'm going to talk about that real quick because the sonnet is the same conversation. So that poem or that kind of thing that I'm working through came out of like a somatic exercise and a project that I'm working on that is looking at, as Dion Brand would say, the gestures that we make towards the colony, right? Throughout our existence, throughout language, throughout the body, right? The things that we internalize and reproduce, right? So basically, I'm like working on a thing that tries to externalize those things however I can, whether that be somatically, whether that be linguistically, whatever, and kind of just work with them as I see it. It's a developing project. I'm going to be working on it more in 2022, but yeah, that's a thing. So yeah, now a sonnet because colonial, right? When I think of the noble past breakfast, I get bored. Low budget Bushwick dads beckon when Amsterdam seems most distant. An origin story is hunger. The rest, chronology, tourniquets my traumas into narrative. I'm a nuanced prize. While remorseless, generally devastated, I take walks, stay cute in a failed logic of endurance, cock my head skyward to imagined sycamores. A smize underwhelms the drama of fucking strangers for subjectivity. Really, it's pleasant work. Requirements allegedly pink, mostly puckered, poetics of a power bottom, slant-rhymed motherfucker dipped in occasional gold. It's here I tower, like a quirk, I'm told, a bonus track abad, the kind where they forget to name her. I'm gonna read a few more. How are we feeling? Are we good? Yeah, okay, I see thumbs, I see smiles. All right, great. Yes, I see. Yes, come on, Lizania. You better. I love that. Come on, bury it up. I'm glad we're feeling good. All right, great. This poem comes from a prompt from the lovely Carl Phillips. Read his books. I don't know what else to say. He's great. Of the question of self and how it never quite gets answered. I love you too, Trace. So I've always been a sucker for bondage. The pleasure in the next room, editorial, Oedipal at best. Falls dictate a temperature, one moment, then another. Mercury's in retrograde. What hasn't been said goes. Erections in lieu of actual thought. Here, the beasts know their names and respond in kind. If one were to adjust the discourse, we could call it a conflict of interest. We're lucky to have some damn sense. Conflict doesn't make marauders of married men, but you can't deny a narrative appeal. Sometimes there's just interest. Some interests function for a sole purpose. Some functions lose occasion before need. Before need, the image is the same. He unzips without confessing anything. Whatever he's eaten is what you are fed. Cool. Gang, gang. All right, all right, all right, all right. Here we go. Where is this poem? Okay, before I read this, actually, you know, I'll close with that. That's fine. We're switching it up. Feeling unpredictable today. Thank you, I. Oh, sure. Okay, cool. I have a persona poem. Right. Right. So I I was known for her persona poems. And yeah, you know, I'm still working on this. Let's just say that. But like, you know, the girls are always writing about him, and I'm just like what's going on there for me? So this is Ganymede and Olympus. Of course, I mean to stay here, violated but competent. Fancy nigga tendencies keeping me warm at night. I amuse myself with loneliness. Armed, all my animal songs dispersed before the day. Not tension, just the interior of one. Memory can have some sick bends toward the noble. Me, I'm singing fictions, deaf to the summit of my myth. There are only two plots, ambition and the rest, of course, is deliberate. Cool. All right. Let's say, I feel like two more. Feeling solid. I love you too. Oh my God, Sam's here. Hi. I can't see all of you in the chat. It's just popping up in like the corner. And ADHD is a real thing. But I love you too. Okay, cool. So two more, and I think we'll be good for conversations and questions. Yeah. All right, cool. To disembark. It stands to reason suffering was last. A score of surface level disasters with intention. Gluten-free for the sake of textbooks. It's July. Someone's tired of the poor. Air quality action day, and no matter the season, me wailing about loss and pentameter. Name a prettier way to plead diaspora. No one commands social death and yet compliance. Like a Kardashian, my desire on display as transactional. Aspartame sweet. Immaterial like credit scores or closure. I remain a good boy for you, America. Barebacking debt like a man talking shit about the state on my iPhone. Grand, isn't it? To represent a people only in blame. Cool. Last one. Now I want to shout out The incredible Lizania Cruz, who made this really, really gorgeous broadside. She sent me a picture of this before she like left the country. Also, y'all, she's in DR right now and like knocked this out in no time. It was wild. But I just really want to shout her out because I think that movement is really important to me. Just like as a person, like if you know me, you know that like I cry for everything. Like people could like walk across the street and I'm just like, but also I'm a Pisces moon. And I think that like something that was like really special to me was like, the movement and the line work is so nuanced and it's so carefully thought about. And like, I just think that like, as a person who cares about the line on a lot of different levels, right? It was just really, really special to me for like her to take this kind of time with this kind of time crunch. I know like the work that all of us are doing in a pandemic, and it's hard and it's crazy and it's weird. And so, yeah, it just felt really, really special to do this with her. And I really, really just want to shout her out. Please follow her work. She's doing some really, really cool things in like her own like artistic life and research outside of this. And so, yeah, also there are great people on this call: Harmony Holiday, Desiree Bailey, Camden Hilliard, all have amazing things coming or like out in the world. Please like support them. Pandemics are weird for artists and it has been a difficult time for, I'm sure, everybody on this call. So like, please, like, let's just love on each other. I love y'all. I'm gonna read this poem. Cool. Also, speaking of another artist, support Black women. This is after Lorna Simpson's Gestures reenactment. It's a piece from 1985. It's a series of still photographs that she took of the same subject with a different kind of text piece underneath. And that's where the title comes from. This is Sometimes It Stands Like a Mother. Or a referent, a closed fist. Excuse me. I am often struck dumb with the purpose of metaphor. Tucked away in an undone logic lay serious inquiries of order, incentive, a body to do until it doesn't. They say inaudibly emphatic, in the face of fugitivity, some girls like to show temperament. I, enigma, abjection, cannot be bothered with such accoutrement. Opacity dies inside a lens imagination won't dare resolve the futility of. And oh, the room, no genius, Jesus, just hyphenate longings, an undefined revulsion. Is it clear now? Whatever invades me ripens. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Jayson. That last line and the whole reading was gorgeous. And we're going to hear about the broadsides now, and then just discuss and ask or take some questions if anyone has any comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Jayson and Harmony. We're going to introduce Lizania Cruz, who designed and printed Jayson's broadside. Lizania is a Dominican artist, participatory artist, designer, and curator interested in how migration affects ways of being and belonging. Hello, Lizania.
Hi, thank you, Jayson. That was so beautiful. And it's funny because I remember in our conversation, you said this line, like the body as the site of history. And I was thinking about lines as a site of history too. So really the process was about thinking about my body as this is like a linoleum cut. And I was trying to think both of the ways that the body carves through the linoleum and thinking very much in a somatic way of how I was reacting to the linoleum. And the composition was really coming from, Lorna Simpson's like work and thinking very much about like how she used the photographs of the body and then the text underneath. And I wanted to break the square as like, just like a way of like creating rhythm with the line. So yeah, it was like great collaborating, and thank you so much. I think like the work that you guys do, like poets do, is incredible. And I'm always amazed by how language has the power to transcend us. So thank you. And thank you for this collaboration. It's incredible.
Thank you, Lizania. And we have Alix Pentecost-Farren. She is an artist and illustrator based in New York, and she designed I's Broadside. Hello, Alix.
Hello. Yes, thank you so much. This has been such an incredible event. This is the image of my broadside. It's always, this is like I think the fourth broadside I've done with Center for Book Arts, and it's just always so challenging trying to like distill something with such a monumental poem. Like, what do I want? What could I? Which part of it can I show? It's just like the poem means so many different things, and I chose this image of this figure who's very defiant and kind of sort of being dragged down by their own like rage, and but also very powerful and triumphant in a way. And then the colors, I think I wanted to use something bright, because even though the protagonist of this poem doesn't seem happy, like I felt I love the work so much. I was happy that it existed. I just kind of wanted to, even though the poems are kind of, as Harmony was saying, they're sort of horrific in a way. I just wanted to kind of show this blinding image. She just came to me so powerfully. And this is a Rezo print.
Okay, Alix, thank you very much. Now we can have a moment where I don't know if people that have been attending would like to comment, intervene, ask questions, participate. We also want to, yeah, well, let's do that first. Jayson here is saying that we love questions.
I have a question. I love this poem, Jayson, and how like the repetition and the intonation makes it about like the it's both language, but it's also like a somatic experience. And in the poem from the broadside too, like I remember the do was like a revision, and I loved it, because also like just like as we are doing and sometimes do nothing. So I just want to hear more on like, how do you use language in this somatic way? And I'm super excited to see what's up in 2022. But if you could speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the question. I think I'm still learning about all of the ways that I can use language in a somatic way, but I guess to kind of walk you through like what I'm thinking. I've been a reader my whole life. English is my only language, right? Like this is the only way that like I know how to like communicate with other people, right? Like I've done like brief stints in like sign language, and like Italian was really cute for me once, but like English is it, right? Like this is the what I do, right? And so as a person who has been interested in language as a consumer, right, my entire life, right, like with the commodity of books, right, that has now become a poet that's like interested in the way that like language like shapes people, right? But also having this like movement background in between. I think the thing that I've like come across, right, has mostly been like, as a person who like lives in New York, right, you are pretty much like, assaulted is a big word, but like people who live here know what I'm talking about, right? Like the minute that you walk outside, there is an advertisement in your face, right? Whether it be on a bus, a taxi cab, right? Like, you know, like a flyer, right? Like there is somebody trying to like convince you to do something, or like a lost dog, right? Like, or like, you know, there are just so many kind of like signals, right? That are kind of like teaching you like how to be and what to do, right? And I think I was thinking a lot about that kind of conditioning. And so like my practice now has been, Jericho Brown talks about the idea that like when you get to a poem, like you have to give yourself permission to like lose your fucking mind, right? And like I'm trying to think about that. I'm trying to think about what it means to like reinterpret like the kind of wildness of language, right, in the poem, right, or just in the kind of like linguistic projects. Yes, the leaving the house tax, exactly. You literally have to spend money to leave the crib. It's wild. And they're still trying to sell you stuff, right, even when you're not trying to spend any money, like. And so, yeah, it's, I think that like, as a person who's been consuming language my whole life in this very specific way, in this very specific medium, right? Like, I'm now interested in the ways that like we can fuck this shit up, right? Because as Dion Brand says, right, like, all of the gestures that we make, right, like in this language are towards the colonial, right? So if we're trying to make a way out of that, like that way can't be under the normal conditions of sense, right? Like that logic just doesn't track. And so like, I guess I'm trying to use my body as like both the intercessor and like the interruption, right? And so like a lot of it for me like involves like improvisational exercise, right? Exercises and thinking about like, you know, how I feel like when different things are said, right? Like the feel of certain words, right? Like, you know, people are like, oh, I'm irritated by moist, right? It's like that, but plus, right? And so, yeah, I hope this is making sense, but like, it's kind of like a very, very messy process that like, I'm trying to kind of just like grab like as many parts of as possible and like link together.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
funny because like I am in the Dominican Republic, and the neighbor where I'm staying, every time he comes home, he whistles to his kids. And it made me think so much about how colonial it is that we like speak, you know, as like, even I speak Spanish, but like, yeah, language as like, you know, how we not use other sounds to communicate. So that's why it made me think it. I've been in that headspace too, and
yeah,
it was so beautiful to hear your reading in that headspace, I guess. So thank you.
That's beautiful. My family also has a whistle, which is why I got so excited. So yes, I'm gonna definitely think about that a lot more. Thank you. There is one in the chat. I guess I'll just do this one next. Karina, hi Karina. Oh, hello. Okay, cool. Jayson, can you speak to how it feels to have a broadside producer of your work? Is this your first time? Was the process collaborative? It feels great. As you can see, me and my girl Lizania have a rapport, and that's cool. I think that it's always nice to meet a collaborator that you have shit in common with. I think a lot of her work kind of speaks to like just personally, like me growing up in New York City, right? And the diasporic experience here. And so like that was really cool to like get to know just on like a general note. And I think it kind of added to like the way that we were able to communicate about the project. It's always nice to work with people that you like. And so that was cool. And then as far as like, I think because the turnaround time was like pretty quick, and because like we were, you know, working under our respective deadlines, I think that like, you know, it was the time that we had together was really, really compressed, but we got so much out of it. Like it was really, really meaty that like by the time I saw like the final product, I was really blown away. Like I just, honestly, like I I sent her a text message like immediately, and I was like, girl, you ate this. Like what the fuck? Like it's wild. And so I felt really, really good about it. And in this way, making a broadside. This is my first time like collaborating with an artist. And so, yeah, it felt really good to do this, you know? So yeah, thank y'all for setting this up. This was a really good partnership. All right, anybody else?
Okay, thank you, Jayson. I gotta say that this was great. I'm so thrilled. Harmony, thank you so much for putting together this program. This is getting the closest to what the Center for Book Arts was in 1974 than anything I've seen recently. Thank you, Karina, for putting this team together. It really is good. I have to say, Camilo, you're a great moderator. Thank you all. I'm so thrilled to watch this program series.
Thank you, Richard. That's so kind.
I had a question for Alix, but I'm not sure if I was maybe reading into this a little bit, but your broadsides design sort of reminded me of communist propaganda posters. Yeah. There's something about the heroic figure of the farmer, and then the farmer's holding a sickle, and there's a lot of kind of just the way that even the like illustration style that you used, and the like graphic lines of like, they almost look like sunbeams to me. I was wondering if I just saw that and had that moment, or if you were drawing any inspiration specifically from that source.
Not exactly. In fact, I it looked more like a sickle, and then I tried to edit the image so it would be a little more ambiguous, like away from that. I wanted it to be kind of like, is the figure holding a weapon, or is it a farming tool? Is she just swinging a stick? Like, what is it? I wanted it to be a little more up in the air. So I think what you're reacting to on my end was just trying to like enter the headspace of the character kind of from the poem, and they sounded powerful to me, and I wanted to kind of there's so much information about body and gestures in the poem, and so I kind of lined up the poem to the parts of the body that it referred to. Like when she talks about pulling, like that's on her arm, and then like stomping is more like down towards her feet. I mean, that's the way the poem is written, but I think that then I had to make the figure be I think a lot of things led to it looking like this glorifying poster design, and what you're saying is really interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But I appreciate hearing your thoughts for sure.
I liked it, and I'm also only one person, so I don't know if anyone else.
Yes, yeah, you're one person, but you hit a nail, and while you besides the Russian and on that, there's the general social realism. You've got Rockwell Kent. You've got a whole series of comic books, graphic novels, let's say, that started in 1929. There's a lot of influence that we have absorbed just by being born.
Wow, that's a beautiful sentiment. Alix, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, if I would love to ask a question just about your general approach to color. I was really struck by like the vibrancy, and I mean, I haven't seen it in person, and I mean, I would love to get a chance to, but like, I was really struck by the vibrancy in like the blues and the oranges, and so like, I was just wondering if like that, if like your thoughts around color, either in the broadside or outside, or were like related to the poem, right? Like, did you have certain visions when you saw it in the language? Like, I'm just wondering what your thoughts were just around color in general and making this.
I think I wanted it was kind of about temperature. I I mean, risograph sort of has a limited palette of inks. I mean, I think if you're really experienced with it, you can probably create any color, but I'm still a little bit learning. So I wanted it to feel fiery. And then the blue is, she does mention blue in the poem. And that's also on a more boring technical note, it's one of the darker colors. So I wanted to make sure that words of the poem were the strongest. You know, I didn't want my image to overtake them too much. Sorry if that's unsatisfying answer. It was sort of a technical consideration.
No, and I think it's really interesting to know that like there are things that can be kind of decided like just by the limits of the material. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I would have no idea. Like, I've never worked with a risograph and probably don't plan to. So that's really interesting. Thank you.
I would also say I love how bright the risograph colors are because it makes it feel, to me, it makes it feel kind of contemporary. And like, I feel like Harmony said it better than me in the chat. What did you say about it being a horrific, like almost
ecstatic?
Yeah, there's like an ecstasy to that. So.
I have a question, low-key, again, sorry. Harmony, can you talk a little bit more about Black horror as you experience it either in I's work or just kind of beyond? I think you made a reference to Bill Gunn, which I thought was really, really apt. But yeah, if you want to speak on that a little bit, you know.
Sure. I mean, several years ago, I got really into Bill Gunn and became obsessed with Ganja and Hess. And I think we all did, but it's been in these waves. And then now it's this trend where I feel like so much has been distilled from it that I can't even love it in the same ways anymore because it's being like milked for other purposes or trends or, you know, style, vogue to seem hip. A lot of like people are glomming onto that aesthetic, but in its like unadulterated form, I think it allows some of what you were saying, also speaking to Dion Brand about the gestures of colonialism. It's like a gesturing away, because if you see his film Ganja and Hess, it's a professor and he's living in this mansion, very isolated, and everything in it gestures away from that. So it's like almost like a suicide fantasy for the Black colonial identity. And I had never seen, I mean, the origin story of that film is that he was given money by a big Hollywood studio to make a blaxploitation type horror flick, like a Dracula, but Blackula type thing. And he like made this and they were pissed off. And it got like an X rating and it was a whole mess for everyone. But I love that he subverted that. And I think I comes the closest to that kind of subversion in language, which is why he came up when I was listening to her again, because that genre that I think now it's popular. Obviously, we like after Get Out and the Jordan Peele movie, which I didn't like whatever that movie was called afterwards with the tethers.
Oh, Us.
Us, yeah, I didn't personally like Us.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, and I hated Spike Lee's remake of Ganja and Hess. I basically think like if that's your sensibility, it's one of the things that you can't contrive, and that's what struck me about listening to I's audio archive. I was telling everyone she doesn't really have the biggest visual archive, at least that I could find. But I don't think you can like want to embody Black horror in language or in your suite of images or in your approach to a film. I think it has to be something that's pretty innate and true to your experience so that you can translate that. And I think right now what we have is a lot of people who want like this sultriness and this like the clout of it, but don't really have the chops, as I would say in music. Like you can't really play, like you can't just like put it on. It's not a costume, you know, but people do think of horror as a costume. And so it's good to think about those boundaries and then like find people who exemplify them. Like I is sort of like, you know, the standard of excellence for that in poems, I think. And if it's only her and it's only Bill Gunn, I think that's fine. I would rather that than have like Spike Lee and 20 more Jordan Peels like try to make, you know, movies that are rooted in horror when that's not what their real tendency is, so that they can find like what they're actually good at doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you.
Long answer. What's the question?
Harmony, that was what you were just saying about horror was really kind of like speaking to something that I think about often, is the way that violence can be sometimes empowering, or the language behind violence. It's like almost a reclamation. And there is this really interesting, you know, kind of aversion that people have to horror films. But I think there is this misunderstanding of like, you know, thinking about it as an aggression towards the viewer, but sometimes it can be almost like in, you know, it's like allowing the viewer to participate in something that is almost therapeutic sometimes. But what I love about this poem that I did, and we spoke about this in our staff meeting yesterday, you know, it feels very contemporary, or, you know, it almost kind of shocked everyone to think about when it was written in the 1970s. And we had this discussion about the play on words and the idea of, you know, I think one person on staff was like, you know, oh, is she thinking about like how in the way that we're thinking about it now? And we realized like, yes, right before this poem was written is when that was like first popularized. And so the fact that she's taking her femininity and like turning it into like an act where, you know, she's taking power from it, I just think is maybe one of the most beautiful things of this poem. And I'm so glad it's been made into a broadside that's not just dark, but that it's celebratory in a way.
Jayson, I have a question. No one else has one for you. Did you feel resonances? Like what was the experience of reading back to back with I, just because this is the first time that I've curated something like this where it's back to back. Did you feel, you had a line in one of your poems about like speaking with echoes, but did you feel any of that shadowing or echoing?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I felt, it's interesting. Well, first off, this is the first time I've ever seen her face, number one. So that was really interesting. I keep this very, very close to me at all times, right? And like, I'm very, very serious about how much cruelty means to me. And so like, I think that was one thing that definitely kept me rooted. And also, it was also the break of seeing her face for like just, you know, a couple of moments and then kind of like hearing her voice. I remember even when we checked it, I like closed my eyes for a second so I could really kind of have her voice in my body. And so, yeah, I think that when I think about resonance between us kind of like artistically, I think about the ways that I think there's an interest in the malleability and therefore like the just overall fragility of the self or the I, right? Like she even talks about it in like the like her naming, right? In like the lowercase I. I think that she does it a lot in her persona work, right? I think that she's constantly interested in power and the ways that it shifts continually between people. I think about her abortion poems all the time, right? I think about poems like Tired Old Horror, right? Like there's a line in there where she says something like, I'll be the only woman within 5 miles who did something with her hands that didn't get a man hard, right? And it gags me every time because I'm just like, that kind of subversion, that kind of play with who is on top, right? You know, I think is really, really, I don't know, it's really, really grounding, right? And I think that, you know, what you were saying earlier about the idea of kind of like her sacrificing in a way to kind of like service that idea or service what she was trying to work towards, like really speaks to me, because I think like at its core, she was talking about power, right? And like how unvarnished it looks, but how, you know, easily like defiled it can be, right? And like, so what we can do underneath it. And so, you know, it's a thing I'm hopeful for in my own work, but like, it's a thing that I'm definitely really interested in. I mean, I think about the ways that I was interested in writing about like sex and the body, like as I started and then understood it as a route elsewhere, right? And so, yeah, no, definitely thought resonances like between us, like lineage-wise, and hearing her voice and like seeing her face for the first time definitely like helps just ground me in that space. So yeah, for sure.
Good to hear. That's what I love about using the archives, because I really think it's this weird disconnect that we don't think to put them out there and create those awkward moments where they're just like alive and forced to confront someone alive, because like a lot of people haven't seen her face ever, you know, so even if we only have like snatches of it on film, there's something about doing that with archives when we can. So I'm glad that it seems to do something.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Harmony, for all the work you've been doing. And Jayson, thank you so much for sharing your work with us tonight. It was such a pleasure to hear you read. And the dialogues that have been set up in this series are just, they're really impactful. And so I hope we have even more people coming back next week if you're in the audience. Or is it next week? No, it's in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's December 2nd.
Yeah, we're skipping Thanksgiving, thankfully. So I hope that we'll see everyone again for the third and final event in the series, because yeah, stellar, outstanding.
Thank you again, Jayson, and thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jayson. Thank you, Harmony. Thank you.
Broadsides also.
Thank you. Yes, by the broadsides also, all three of them.
Yes, all of them.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you
Bye,
very much.
everybody.
Bye-bye.